What is up, everyone? Welcome to round one of the May tournament for Portland Monthly Premodern Magic Afternoons 2024. We've got a couple of really cool decks, so without further ado, let's jump in. First up, we have Caustic on Mono Black Control, or should I say Mono Black Land Destruction. There is 12 land destruction spells here, including 4 Rishadan Ports, 4 Wastelands, and 4 Braids Cabal Minion, which is just awesome. This deck is all about denying your opponents their mana to cast their spells, and then eventually swinging in for the win with Grinning Demon. Mono Black is not known for dealing with enchantments or artifacts, so I do see 3 Powder Kegs and 3 Nevinyrral's Discs, both probably also to help against the aggro matchups. Overall, this is a really cool list. I really want to see how it performs. Next up is Marshall running back his blue-white Tron list that did so well. I forget if it was last month or the month before. Either way, super cool list. It's a blue-white control list that takes advantage of the Tron lands for big X spells like Decree of Justice, or even just utilizing Masticore to his full potential. This is going to be a very tricky matchup for him against so much land destruction, but he does have the permission spells and the ways to get around it, so I think it's going to be a pretty even match overall. So without further ado, let's jump in. And here we go. We have Caustic on the left, Marshall is on the right. Now, both decks are pretty control heavy, I would say, in different ways, obviously. Marshall with lots of counter magic and lots of creature removal, and then Caustic, of course, with just lots of land destruction and potentially getting off to a good start here. I don't know who's going first, but it looks like Caustic is keeping. So is Marshall. All right, here we go. Marshall gonna lead off straight with a Tron land, not hiding what his deck is gonna be about. Again, this is round one, so no one knows what they're playing. Caustic immediately putting a Wasteland to the front of his hand, and let's take care of that land right away. Oh, how about a tower? Does that one stick around? Probably. I do see some land destruction. I think we're just going to play out a swamp here. Those Innocent Bloods are probably coming out of Caustic's deck in the... Not sure why that got flipped around. It is in Japanese. Yeah, those Innocent Bloods are probably dead cards for the most part, unless Marshall runs out a Masticore pretty early on without any sort of backup for it. So I can see those getting removed, but it does look like he's at least got one of those in hand. Okay, we got a Rishadan Port coming down. Oh, before jumping to Marshall's turn, we're going to Impulse. This is the new one from Dominaria Remastered, I believe. I believe it's also art by Dominic Mayer, which is one of my favorite new Magic artists for sure. All right, we're going to port the blue-white land. Notably, you have to actually filter the colorless through it to get blue-white, but it is still his only color source, so it makes the most sense to go ahead and port. All right, we're 2/3 of the way to Tron. If if Caustic hadn't of Wasteland, Marshall would have had natural Tron. Maybe not natural, but turn 4 Tron in Premodern is still pretty damn good. Okay, we got another swamp coming down. Are we going to see some land destruction here? Interesting, blowing up the tower. I think you would want to go for their only colored source maybe, but no. Okay, here we are. All right, the one of Powder Keg coming down. Marshall hasn't seen any creatures yet, but getting that out early and choosing when you add counters to it could be really really relevant. Wasteland as well. All right, we're gonna Ice Quake and just hold up the Wasteland. Interesting. Okay. I think that means we're going to have a Grinning Demon coming down potentially. All right, Rishadan Port. Do you Wasteland one of the mana sources here so you can get through casting a big creature? You know your opponent's in white, so swords is definitely an option. Do you take them off of swords? All right, porting both lands and passing. Interesting choice. I guess that was on Marshall's upkeep. So I guess this makes sense. This way Caustic can pass into his turn, not have to worry about it, still keep up his wasteland for one of the Tron lands. And a little hard to tell. I thought he had a Grinning Demon in hand. Maybe he doesn't. I've actually been very impressed with that card lately. There we go. 4 mana, 6/6. It does deal 2 to you each upkeep. You can morph it by paying 4 to flip it, which there might be something to be said for morphing it and then flipping on your turn if you don't have another good play, but usually you taking 2, your opponent taking 6 is not bad. Alright, taking 2 from the demon. We're swinging for 6 here. That is a very quick clock. And it looks like the dice are not going to be updated, but we'll just remember that Marshall's on 14. All right, we're going to play out a Braids, which I think is going to get prohibited. Oh wait, that's right. That doesn't actually work on that. Okay. Well, Braids trigger, sacks the Powder Keg, plays out a Flooded Strand. At the very least, Marshall is still hitting his land drops consistently, and that is very good in this matchup for sure. Having lost, what is it, 4 lands already? 2 Caustics, land destruction. Alright, fetch down to 13. At this point, I don't think a single life is going to make too much difference. Probably grabbing, yep, Plains. I didn't see if he had a Swords in hand, but best to get all your mana colors while you can. Then tapping out. Are we going to Frantic Search here, or are we going to Frantic Search? Okay, we are going to Frantic Search in the main. Discarding 2. 2 Strokes of Geniuses. That's the other part of Marshall's deck that I forgot to mention. The other payoff for the Tron lands is the draw spells, which help you find more Tron lands and your win cons. We saw those be very effective in the last Premodern tournament that Marshall brought this deck to. But he's looking in serious trouble here in game 1. Does not have a Swords. Was really hoping, I think, to find a Swords to stabilize, but it's going to be facing quite a bit of damage here. And actually, I'm wondering if... Okay, no, here's what's happening. Caustic is porting in response to the Braids trigger, and then sacking one of the swamps. Okay, we're going to Decree here for no value, and does draw a Swords. Ooh, that makes this a lot more interesting. Now, I think Caustic did just draw another land destruction spell, an Ice Quake. Do you hit the white source here, or the blue source? Now, Marshall's only real out right now is a Swords, so I feel like you have to hit the white source. Of course, we're operating on extra knowledge, knowing that not only does he play him, he's got one in hand. And it looks like we are going to hit Icequake, hitting the Plains, and I think that's going to be game, assuming Marshall does not draw another one. And nope, that is going to be game number 1. All right, here we are in game number 2. Well, that was everything the mono black control deck wants to do. Having that threat at exactly the right time, no interaction from your opponent. One of the really downsides of Grinning Demon is the fact that there are, well, it doesn't have trample first, so any small creature decks are really hard to deal with, which might be why there are 3 Powder Kegs in Caustic's deck. But overall, it's also kind of just interesting card against, say, Burn. On its face value, not super great, but being able to morph it and then flip it in response to damage being targeted towards it can be good. Or, say, blocking a Jackal Pup and flipping it. There are some hidden tricks with it for sure. And being able to play it as a 3-mana 2/2 is not necessarily the best, but can be relevant in those matchups over something like a Phyrexian Negator, which is just plain bad against Burn. Alright, so we got Marshall kicking it off. Chromatic Sphere and a Mine. Alright, and then Caustic's going to Duress here. Let's see what we're working with. Swords, 2 Strokes of Genius, and an Impulse. I feel like you take the swords here. We only got 1 other land in hand, so that stroke is not looking super great. He doesn't have a blue sword. He doesn't actually have any colored swords. Technically, he can filter it through the Chromatic Sphere, but that is just a one of. So really needs to draw a colored land here. Did not do it, playing out the tower. And interestingly enough, Innocent Blood's staying in Caustic's deck. I think he's got at least 1. No, he's got 2 in hand. That is not great. Will not have a target for that anytime soon. Alright, Wasteland coming down. Do you Wasteland the tower here just in case Marshall lucks into turn 3 Tron? Would benefit from it too, being able to filter at least 1 blue mana through the sphere. Oh, we're going to Dark Ritual here. Does he have a Grinning Demon? Or is he just land destruction? Alright, yeah. We're going to Rain of Tears the tower. Good call. Oh, but going to filter... Looking for a counterspell here, or at least having a counterspell in hand already? A mana leak? Nope. That's going to hit the bin. And now that Wasteland can stay up for a little while longer. Caustic's deck having access to 3 mana minimum is very important, considering those 12 land destruction spells are all 3 mana, 2 which are black. Alright, before that mana disappears that Marshall floated, we are going to Impulse here. Does find a colored mana source, thankfully. Also Decree of Justice and some other stuff, but he really just needs the land and the colored mana. I did say this was going to be a rough matchup for the blue-white deck, assuming Caustic can get enough land destruction out. Alright, access to blue and white. Granted, he doesn't have to filter it, so he doesn't have to tap both lands to do it, but it is there. I think Caustic does have another land destruction spell. Nope, just going to play out Powder Keg and pass. Alright, Marshall going to Impulse on end step again. Finds another Decree. And I'm not sure what he kept there. There's also at least 1 other Tron land there. Alright. Drawing one of his sideboard cards, I think, too. Okay, plays out the tower. So he did take a Tron land, at least. Just needs the power plant for things to really get moving. I think he actually might have 2 towers in hand. Or 1 tower, I guess. Let's see, play out the other one. Alright, Rashad and Port coming down. Wasteland the tower. And that'll work. Ooh, Teferi, Isle of Teferi, or I forget what this one actually does. but it does kill one of Caustic's land. This is a very good land hate piece. I wish I could remember exactly what it does. I'm sure chat will, or the comment section will enlighten me, but I do know it is the worst thing to see when all you're doing is blowing up lands. All right, so we see that Marshall has a power plant and a mine, more colored mana sources, a miscalc, and 2 strokes of genius. I feel like at this point, oh, taking a stroke of genius. I guess that makes sense. He's going to start be able to cast that for decent value pretty soon. And I think at this point we can safely say Marshall is stabilized. Does not have a tower yet for Tron, but has more lands than Caustic and more to do. Caustic, of course, still having those 2 Innocent Bloods stuck in hand. Does have another Duress. Okay, are we Duressing here again? Nope, that miscalc is going to happen. So in a way, he got to hit the miscalc. But also notably, Caustic missing on his land drops, which is kind of huge. Like I said, this deck really needs at least 3 mana. And then his win cons are 4 mana. He does have a Braids in hand. Does finally get a swamp. And not sure if he has much to do. Oh, he does have a 3rd Duress. All right. And there's a second miscalculation. Yep, you do have to pay 2, I believe, for that to resolve. Not quite as good as Mana Leak, but you can cycle it. And of course, amazing art signed by Jeff. I'm going to butcher his name, but Labustine? Anyways, amazing artist. I believe he also did Recurring Nightmare too, which is one of my favorite pieces in Premodern. And Caustic gonna have a little think here. Does not have a 3rd land drop, but does have a Dark Ritual, which will resolve. And we do see a Braids. Very risky, being down so much on resources. Ooh, how about a Decree of Justice for 3? 3 little guys, plenty of fodder, and I feel like... Oh, no, and that's why the powder keg was left at 0. Caustic correctly realizing that Decree of Justice could be a real threat. And now Marshall does actually have to sack a land here. Alright, I believe this is in response to the trigger. Do we have a Meddling Mage coming down? Yes. Did we forget the Braids trigger? We might have. Unless somehow he was able to sack one of his tokens to Decree, or from Decree, before it got wiped with Powder Keg, but I don't think so. I also wonder what that Meddling Mage is naming. Obviously, it must have been Innocent Blood because, well, unless Caustic didn't want to sack his Braids. Interesting. Oh wait, sorry. No, I guess Marshall did remember the sack trigger for for Braids. It was just a little quick. He did do it. There's a third pile in the very bottom corner of his graveyard that I didn't see. I was still looking at the Decree of Justice. My mistake. But he did do it. Alright. Chromatic Sphere coming down. And pass. And at this point, I think that Braids is doing more harm than good for Caustic. Braids is definitely a card that excels when you're ahead. I wouldn't quite say it's win more. It definitely locks your opponent out of the game, though. And can be a clock in its own right, granted a very slow clock. Alright, we do have an Innocent Blood coming down. So Meddling Mage did not name Innocent Blood. Curious to see what it actually did name. Okay, we have Frantic Search, and let's go filtering for some mana. Ooh, that is a Masticore. Alright, Meddling Mage coming down. And are we going to see a Masticore here? Does not have a way to protect it. I'm not sure what's in Caustic's hand other than that other Innocent Blood at this point either. He could have drawn a third one by now, for all I know. Alright, we're going to Frantic Search. An end step. Ooh, did he draw another Decree? Actually pitching the Masticore. Interesting. Okay. Opting for the long game here. And I think now has Tron assembled as well. Power plant, mine, and tower. Yeah, does have Tron. And does have a Decree of Justice. Ooh boy. Alright. This is looking very grim now for Caustic. He was losing on board, but now he is really losing to a fully powered Tron Decree of Justice. How about we make 10 1/1s? 2-turn clock. Let's go. And to another Decree of Justice. So even if a board wipe happens, it's still not going to be good enough. I don't even know if Caustic has... Well, I guess he has the powder keg. But even if he kills him all this turn, it's still not going to be enough. That's going to be game number 2 going to Marshall. I know you've heard of death by 1,000 cuts, but how about death by 1,000 1/1s? This is definitely the finisher in Marshall's deck, and fully on display about why it is so powerful. Having the third backup Decree of Justice too just honestly clinched it. Even if Caustic had ripped his board wipe, it would not have made a difference. Alright, looks like Marshall's going to be going to 6. Caustic keeping a 7. I do think the black control deck does benefit from going first here. Getting to 3 lands first is a huge advantage, and of course dodging that first counter spell is pretty big. Having Dark Ritual into turn 2ing land destruction could be relevant as well. Notably, Caustic not playing with any sort of acceleration or reduction here beyond the Dark Ritual, so no Jet Medallion, no Charcoal Mana Rock. And Marshall finding a keepable 6 here. Alright, turn 1 Duress, that is pretty good. 2 Decrees, or sorry, a Decree, 2 Meddling Mages, Powder Keg. Really only can take the Powder Keg or the Decree, and I think you take the Decree here. That Powder Keg would need to take up quite a bit to get to a relevant number. Unless, of course, it takes out an opponent's Powder Keg. But even then, I think is not a bad trade. Oh, okay, taking the Powder Keg. You would think after dying to a Decree for 10, you'd be a little more scared of it, but I guess We don't know exactly what's in Caustic's hand. 2 Engineered Plagues. Okay, that makes sense. Sticking Engineered Plague for Soldier does basically nullify a decree. But I have to think that Marshall probably brought in 1 or 2 more pieces of artifact destruction and enchantment removal, I guess, which are the same thing in white because Seal of Cleansings and Disenchants.
Okay, I'll go Rashad Import.
Okay, we got a Rashad Import. Interestingly, not porting the land, letting... Oh, I guess it's a Flooded Strand. I thought it was the filter land. That makes sense. They look very similar in my defense. Alright. We are going to get the blue and the white mana here with a Meddling Mage. Naming what? I do love this Meddling Mage art. I do wish it was an old border, but I'm not going to give Marshall crap for that. He's got a beautiful deck list. And of course we've seen some of his other decks on the channel as well. Full of amazing altars. I imagine there's probably a story as to why he chose this particular Meddling Mage. Definitely wasn't the cost. I think these are probably more expensive than just the regular old borders. Cheaper than the foil ones, obviously, but you know, we're getting into crazy talk there when we talk about foils of Meddling Mage. Innocent Blood. Meddling Mage 1 not naming Innocent Blood is very interesting. Alright, and now here we see a port, which makes sense because you're not trying to port a fetch land like I would have tried to do. Alright, Adhikar Waste. For another Meddling Mage. Is this one naming Innocent Blood? We will never know. After this tournament, I did put down strips of paper on the table for people to write their Meddling Mage triggers, and we'll continue to do that moving forward because it is probably helpful. I know it's helpful for me because I have to speculate. Engineered Plague coming down on, I guess, does Decree make human soldiers or is it just soldiers? And what's Meddling Mage's type? Is it human wizard or is it just wizard? I think it's human wizard. Let's do a quick Scryfall search while do this. Alright, Chromatic Sphere coming down. Draws another land and doesn't have much in hand right now, it seems like. I mean, he does have the Decree. I think he might have a Swords as well. Alright, how about a second Engineered Plague? Alright, yeah, so Meddling Mage is a human wizard. And must have named human with both. Interestingly, I don't think Decree makes human tokens. I think it's just soldier tokens. They're not humans. So this might be a huge whiff on Caustic's side. Because both Engineered Plagues would have to have been on human for that Meddling Mage to die. Unless whatever in Scryfall is wrong, but this card did just get reprinted in MH3, and the updated card text just says soldier. Alright, we have an Icequake coming down. Before that resolves, make 2 soldiers. And I wonder what the Meddling Mage was naming that was worth spending 2 Engineered Plagues on. Oh, okay, Marshall does have a Swords. Alright, we do have a clock on board now. That's an Innocent Blood. I'll take care of one of them. Double the amount of time you stay alive. And has 2 Braids in hand. Still needs a 4th land drop to actually get that Braids across the finish line. Ooh, and more, because I think Marshall has a miscalc in hand too. Caustic, give me a little thinking on sequencing here. Marshall hitting most of his land drops despite removal has been very consistent. I think he's got a Stroke of Genius in hand as well. Oh, that is another Engineered Plague. And we're gonna go for it. Yep, that's gonna get miscalculationed. Doesn't have the 2 mana to pay for it, and those soldiers are staying alive. Swinging in for 2. Well, that makes sense. Maybe if he had all 3 in hand, why he would do 2 on human. Okay, innocent blood happening. And just a pass. And then going to draw a bunch of cards. Well, just 2. Draw 2 for 6 mana is not the most efficient rate, but once you start messing around with Tron mana, or sorry, draw 3. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I messed up the casting cost on this calc. So, draw 3 for 6. That's better. Okay, porting the plains. Draws a mine. This art always messes me up, by the way. This does not look like a mine. This looks like a tower. Because it's sticking out of the ground. Mines are supposed to be in the ground. What the hell? Alright, we got some more land destruction. The Rain of Tears. Hitting the power plant, I guess? At this point, you just want to keep him off of Tron. You're not going to keep him off of all his mana sources. Okay, we are going to float the land before it blew up. Make 3 more soldiers. And suddenly, we got a clock again. Oh, there's another mine. Good call on Caustic side from taking down the power plant. Ooh, and there's 2 swords in hand. Are we making an angel? We are making an angel. All right. Marshall getting on the aggressive here. I don't think in any of the matches he was on camera last time we ever saw him make an angel, but here we are, 4/4 flyer. Not quite gonna be lethal. Oh no. I don't know if that was off the top or if he was just slow rolling it, but that is an excellent draw for Caustic, and Marshall cannot counter it. Interesting that he let the untap happen. I'm not saying Marshall has Stifle in the deck, but he could have Stifle in the deck. No reason to let your opponent untap. Alright, we got Chromatic Sphere. We crack it. Gets a Frantic Search, which might be happening now. Yeah, with the mana floated from Chromatic Sphere, plus those 2 lands. Draws another Frantic Search. And the Teferi card that I am blanking on, but blanks land destruction. Getting rid of a swords. He does have 2 in hand. Really only needs to hit the Grinning Demon. Potentially a Braids as well. And Caustic just being stuck on 3 lands here is really hurting his chances. Ooh, and yep, here we go. Actually, how about you blow up a land? Or just stops land. I thought it blew up a land too. I don't know. What do I know? Alright, another Frantic Search happening here. Untap 3. Doesn't have anything going on in hand. Drew another Teferi. Teferi's Protection? Is that what it's called? Teferi's Response. 2 for an instant. Counter target spell or ability an opponent controls that targets a land you control. If a permanent ability is countered this way, destroy that permanent. Draw 2 cards. Yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, how about another one? Draw 2 more. And Caustic just is not hitting his lands. His kill spells are not happening either. Marshall is almost on Tron, just needs an energy plant here. Which he might actually... No, he doesn't have it in hand. I think that's one of the eggs behind the swords. Does have 2 Rashawn ports and is looking like that might be what he does on opponent's upkeep. Can cast the Braids. But are we just going for another land destruction? I think that is not Rain of Tears, it's the other one. I'm blanking on the one that has the dwarfs in it that cares about Threshold. Incidentally, is a fantastic card also against Decree of Justice, which might be why he's considering not playing it. Alright, let's duress. Alright, before you duress, let's draw 6 cards? Jesus. Alright, what are you going to take now? I mean, assuming... Oh, there's a power plant, which you can't take. Another Decree. 2 the eggs. The Teferis and a swords. Sorry, yes, 2 swords. And that is a lot of value. Oh, and there's a Masticore too. FYI. Alright, yeah. Blank your removal. Oh, and that's why the Rashawn port was removed, because he used it on the Rashawn port last game, which does destroy it because it's not just a spell. I gotcha. Okay. That's all making sense to me. I'm picking up what you're putting down, Marshall. Alright, plant out both the eggs. Not technically mana rocks. They are sort of mana fixing. Can draw you some cards. Did he not play out the power plant? I don't think he did. Maybe choosing to hold it in reserve just in case. Wait until he has a turn where he can really utilize it. Would make sense. Alright, and now Caustic is finding the land drops. Seeing how much land destruction he still has left in the deck. How much is it worth it to go after the Tron lands? At this point, unfortunately, Caustic's deck has lost the plot. Once your opponent gets to this much mana, all the land destruction spells in the world are not going to matter. We saw exactly what this deck wanted to do in game 1, which was early interaction to take your opponent off of their land drops, drop a threat, and win before they can catch up. At this point, though, Caustic is unfortunately the one that has to play catch up, and does not, I think, have the cards in the deck that can do it. Even a Grinning Demon here, he's staring at 2 swords, which choosing not to play out the Braids because the Braids is actually worse for him, being down on resources. He can sack the Engineered Plagues for what would be minimal value. There are probably still 2 Meddling Mages in Marshall's deck, potentially, which I think is what he's considering. But those Engineered Plagues are doing nothing right now. Alright, we are going to port 2 lands, just in case. Ooh, and there's a 3rd power plant. That one coming out. And Tron is online for so much mana. Playing out the Masticore. Playing out 2 Masticores. I was going to say that looked like too much mana for just 1 Masticore. Yeah. And a Chromatic Sphere. Got plenty of cards in hand. And pass. Has so much mana, in fact, actually pitches the 2nd power plant. Just to keep 7 cards in hand. And Cossack giving a little read because, yeah, for 2 mana, that Masticore just shoots you. So you're swinging in for 8 this turn. I mean, there's probably Innocent Bloods in Cossack's hand. So maybe only swinging in for 4. Alright, we got a Braids, which I think just gets shot down, right? Yep. Still at untapped tower. That's 3 mana plus 1 more. That's 2 damage. And I think at this point, Marshall should just go for the win. I think he can make enough mana where he just shoots. Okay, he's gonna do this before the discard to the Masticores. Also impulsing before the discard of the Masticore. Just put him out of his misery. He's just making sure he's got the win. I think he's got the win no matter what, because yeah, those Masticores are nasty. One of the most broken cards at their heyday. Alright, doing some more stuff. Oh, sorry. My mistake. The Masticore cannot actually shoot a person. It just can shoot a creature. Still. Down to 2. He did find another Decree of Justice. Oh my god. Alright, this is over. Yep. Good games. Marshall takes it down in 3. And that's going to be the end of round number 1. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. That was some pretty crazy magic. Cossack almost getting there with a mono black control deck. That's super sweet, but Marshall taking it down with what we've seen to be a very powerful Tron build and something that looks very interesting to play. I might have to sleeve up something similar eventually. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. We've got a ton of Premodern videos coming and a ton in the bank, so make sure to go and watch some older ones as well if there's any decks that stand out to you. If you've liked, subscribed, and done everything that you can to support the channel, but you want to do more, there is a Patreon link in the video description that goes towards gear upgrades and travel expenses and that sort of thing. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time.